Welcome, IT changemakers, to the DEX Show with Tim Flower and Tom McGraw. Let's get into it.
Hello, changemakers. Welcome to Reality Bites. It is, as you well know, the show within a show within a show where the Reality Bites team gets to welcome to the show and talk to some of our favorite and most fascinating Nexthinkers. And I have to tell the audience that I was going to pick my car up from the garage on the bus. I think very, very early this week, and I thought we have to get a new guest on the show. And I thought, who haven't we spoken to before on the show who would be a great guest? And it hit me there and then, listeners, that we'd never invited onto the show before. One of my favorite Nexthinkers to talk to, one of the best speakers and talkers we have at Nexthink, and that is none other than Senior Product Marketing Manager, Dave Wagner. Dave, what a pleasure to welcome you to Reality Bites. How are you doing today?
Wow, I guess I'm humbled, but I am curious. How did thinking about repairing a car pop my name in your head? There's got to be a link.
I was on the bus and I was thinking, when sometimes you're on the bus, you're not driving, you have a chance to think about things you haven't done, and I was like, oh my goodness, we need a great Reality Bites guest, and that was how it came.
Okay, I was just wondering if it happened to be, I was on holiday 2 weeks ago and I was out in Arizona and I posted a picture of my first dream car. Like when I was 12, I wanted this car. It was a 1967 Pontiac Firebird in bright blue and it was mint. And I was just like, oh, and I shared it with the team on Yammer and Teams chat with some of my friends. And I wondered if you'd seen that. And so that's how you made the car. That would have been the car link. But anyway.
It's a kind of connection anyway,
it's a bit of our reality, right?
So I think so. And we're joined with Sean, who's also got some questions for you. And we're hoping to be joined by Oriana, Dave. And I know Oriana was particularly excited to talk to you because she really wants to discuss Bismarck a little bit.
Okay. Yeah. Unfortunately, he's not here with us, but he might show up. If he does, we'll
always
put it on
ideal
camera.
To have a dog join a podcast. To be honest with you,
yeah. But, he does have that ability. Yeah. So,
but Dave, maybe a way to introduce yourself to the listeners. You have had a singularly intriguing career, sir, and a brief history to begin would be great.
Oh, I really got to keep it brief. Okay, so it started out in the 70s. I was an original hacker. So I would literally break into digital time-sharing machines during the university in the 70s. And then I'd go upstairs and report to the operators, "Here, here's how I broke it. You better put a problem ticket into digital." So there were a group of us that did this back in the late 70s. And there was a group in Arizona where I was. There was a group in Massachusetts. There were other groups. And they all became known as the hacker community. Long story short, digital ended up hiring me and some of my friends right out of college to be operating system engineers, to go in and code the operating system, fix the operating system. Yeah. And in my case, make it more performant, make it more efficient. And so that's been a common theme throughout my entire career, whether OS engineer, whether in product management, product marketing. I did 2 startups in the area. It's always been about making computers more responsive to people using them. And so in a roundabout that way, that's how I ended up here at Nexthink, because Nexthink was starting to get into the concept of how do we manage applications? It's one thing to manage device in your desktop and all that's good. But, the reality of the world is, and this is something I learned very early on, applications make the world go round. If you don't have applications, you don't have a reason for a computer. And the reason to have any application is to boost productivity. Well, to boost productivity, the application's got to work and everything else the employee's doing has to work. They have to work together. And Nexthink alone, from my experience, was doing that. I've worked with APMs. I've done 2 startups in the APM space, but Nexthink, offered a really exciting opportunity for me to apply that decades of experience in performance optimization to optimizing the performance experience of employees using applications. So that's how I came here. I've kind of jumped in and sort of tried to evangelize application experience as we continue to enhance it, because that's been my background for literally decades.
Excellent. And I'm glad to say Oriana has made the show. Oriana, we already shouted out Bismarck on your behalf. I said, how much you wanted to get that opportunity. I'm
so glad. Bismarck is wonderful.
Yeah.
Bismarck is wonderful.
For those who don't know, Bismarck is our Cavalier King Charles Spaniel, and he basically runs our family, and any human whose eyes he makes contact with for 5 seconds, he then owns. We call it being absorbed into his Borg. So hence everybody talking about him. But
excellent. So we are, as you might have heard, Oriana, we've already got stuck in a little bit to application experience. So, and I know you had some questions about that. So over to you.
Yeah, I was super interested to hear from Dave's perspective how you would say the rise of SaaS solutions have changed the way IT is managed, and just sort of getting your perspective on that longitudinal change in employee experience with applications and also more generally with digital tools at work.
okay, it's interesting you mentioned that because I sort of alluded to that in the history of my career. But when distributed systems, and I'm talking after mainframe. So when Unix servers and Windows servers, client server computing first started coming out, we saw the rise of a class of applications that could not be measured as to how they're performing as experienced by users. With mainframes, everything that computer did was transactionalized, and you had telemetry inside the operating system kernel. You could literally measure how long it took for someone to do a form submission on an IBM terminal and for the data to come back. Piece of cake. Okay. But when distributed systems, Unix and Windows servers, client server computing came in, it created a new class of application for which there was no way for IT to measure the performance of the experience. And so the industry responded, as it often does, creating new types of applications. Standards bodies arose to measure all of that. And so you started seeing the rise of APM tools right about the time when custom web apps were created. And so when people create custom web apps, they pre-instrument the code so that the people who write the code can see if it's performing well or not. Now, that's still not the totality of the user experience, but at least it was a step. Okay. So as our industry always does, the nouns continue to change, but the verbs like virtualization and abstraction layers and things like that, APIs and all the rest, all of those things stay the same. The nouns are different, right? Okay, so the noun today is an application is SaaS hosted on the web out there in a cloud. It's immensely horizontally scalable. It offers innumerable price, performance, and cost benefits to all involved. But once again, it's a new class of applications. You can't actually understand how they're being experienced. You can't measure it from the technology side outward. Same problem they had needing APM tools, same problem they had back in client server days. And so, it creates a whole new exposure to a class of blindness that had been solved once before, and it's time to solve it once again. Now, the challenge with SaaS apps is they're packaged and commercial. You can't change the code. So you can't use APM tools for them. And yet the need to understand the performance is still there. And so that's where we took real user monitoring, which is an offshoot of APM, and we married it to that deep full stack visibility that Nexthink already had to deliver that complete solution. And so that's why I'm excited about it. And that's why I think the rise of SaaS applications is just literally an unstoppable force behind the demand for needing that comprehensive visibility.
So when you're mentioning this sort of need for visibility, I think one of the big challenges for a lot of IT leaders is just keeping up, especially with the increase in the number of applications being used. This has been a really hot topic recently. The numbers are really exploding with how many different tools almost any employee is using at this point. So I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about, with that explosion, how does this tool help leaders keep up?
Well, it's really there's really two angles that we take with application experience. One is to literally put any and all application telemetry in one place for consumption in one integrated workflow. So that's how we can literally look at the performance of, for example, Microsoft Office 365, whether you happen to go through a browser client or whether you're going through the desktop client. We have visibility into both aspects of it in one place. So that is a critical capability, is to literally put it all in one place. The other one is, and again, this can only be done by a very comprehensive and deep and rich cloud backend like we have with Nexthink Workplace Experience and the Infinity platform, is that we have telemetry that allows you to then, as a leader, filter on, ask what if questions based on other dimensions than necessarily just the application. You correctly mentioned, Oriana, that employees are using dozens or hundreds of applications every day, and guess what? They're all using them with different versions of the browser on different operating system environments with different configurations via different network connectivities, all of which are multiplying factors on that complexity equation. And so by literally putting it all in one place with one consistent workflow, that helps leaders then prioritize. We have dashboards that literally you can sort rank which are my applications that are performing the worst over the last period of time. You can get alerts on, it looks like performance for these applications is degrading. It hasn't yet hit critical levels. Your technology metrics don't say anything's down, but you might want to go look at this area. And so it's that visibility across everything in a rank ordered, prioritized fashion that gives leaders the capabilities they need when they're faced with, dozens or hundreds of apps that are being used in thousands of different possible combinations. And oh, by the way, the vendors are constantly rolling out new changes, right? Let's all think that CrowdStrike rollout that wasn't properly tested. That was a bad change to a web application that had downstream implications on that. So applications are important. Sometimes they can actually bring everything down. And so you need that visibility into all aspects of how they're performing.
Right. And I really like how you're stressing the multiplicative factor because, like you said, it's not additive, it's multiplicative because all of these factors create so many different intersections of possibilities.
Exactly. And the reality is cloud providers cannot test every possible permutation and combination of other configurations outside of their environment. They can't know. And so it behooves everyone when using SaaS and web applications, it behooves them to follow best practices, to always roll out things in a pilot fashion before rolling out more broadly, and to test those pilots with complete visibility. And that's where AppX comes in. Test things with complete visibility. You now have a performance baseline, and then you have a target to roll out against as you roll these things out when they're tested for your combinations. And had people done that with CrowdStrike, they wouldn't have had this problem. We would have seen a very rapid increase in the crashes of a particular application when used in combination over the web with this particular version of the client stub with the DLL. And, we can't stop the actual problem the first time, but what you can do is get very quick visibility into it and put a fence around it, right? And prevent it from spreading. And so, again, to do that, you need complete visibility, and only with AppX do you get that complete visibility.
Yeah, that makes sense. So tell us some more about AppX, and especially what's new and exciting that's coming out now in 2024.
To me, the most exciting thing this last year, we're up over 450 customers now globally with AppX, tens of millions of browser instrumentations. So it's massively successful. But what's really been encouraging to see lately is the adoption by more and more application support teams and application owners, in addition to the EUC teams solving their issues, right? These teams are now seeing the value of it. And with the most recent features that we've added, things like that we call waterfall or resource metrics, where we literally now can see inside an application's slow performance to say, what resources are being loaded that are causing it? Is it a call off to another web server? Is it a really big PNG or MPG file that's getting downloaded as part of an application? And so what it allows people to do is literally now they can use AppX as their frontline operational monitor of choice for all applications. And then when it says, because we can with AppX, it says, look, the problem is in the back end. That's when you hand it over to the application team to go either fix the code if it's a custom app or a customized commercial SaaS platform, or go back to the vendor and have them fix it. But it's that ability to rapidly focus that really, I think, is really cool. And we've added enough features in the last few point releases to where it is now a very robust, full function, full stack application monitoring tool. And so that use case, I think, is now increasingly being adopted. It's increasingly resonating with people because the reality is nobody can afford to deploy an APM tool for every application. They're incredibly expensive. A. B, They don't work with many SaaS applications, again, because you can't inject code into the code stack for them, which is how server-side instrumented APM tools work. And C, any other operational monitoring tools that they're using are monitoring the technology of the web app. They're doing synthetic transactions to see if the website's up or down, things like that. Okay, again, not aligned to experience. So to me, our ever increasing alignment to the totality of experience of performance when employees use applications is really the game changer. And now that we're adding things like AI, where we're going in and doing correlative analysis and helping come up with instant diagnostics to say, look, these transactions are slow, and these are the shared traits of why they're slow. You might want to investigate over here. This is huge. This is huge. So if you can tell I'm excited about it, it's because I've been doing performance for a long time, and this kind of visibility is just very compelling. It's really about getting people to see the art of the possible.
Yeah, it's really great to get your longitudinal perspective on that.
Great answers, Dave. You actually answered two questions I had. One was on the CrowdStrike and MS outage, and the other about the impact of AI. And I think you kind of hit the nail on the head.
Always a danger, Sean, with Dave. He's going to get ahead of us.
Yeah, I get talking and I can't stop because the enthusiasm just pours out, right?
No worries. I had one further question, though, maybe just to step back for just a second from AppX and the product, but in more generally, what do you think the future holds just for application experience and management in terms of like for IT, for user experience, and the importance of DEX tools?
Okay, so I'll start by flashing back to something I said at the very beginning, and that is, if there's one thing I've learned over my career, it's that applications exist. They only exist. They're only justified. They're only ever purchased if they can demonstrably improve the productivity of some human process. Okay, that's given that. Okay, then it really comes down to, I don't know if many of you remember the movie and the book Moneyball. Okay, where people that thought about math came in and said, we're going to manage and measure sports success by what matters, not by what we've always measured. And they, and it literally revolutionized things. And DEX is very much like Moneyball. We're measuring the only thing that matters. We're monitoring it. We're looking at it for drift and variance in a proactive fashion. And we're solving problems in ways that impact the experience in the best way possible for the most people possible, because it totally aligns with what? Productivity. Okay. And so it literally, I mean, I get goosebumps thinking about it. I've done 2 startups. Okay. They weren't as wonderfully named as Nexthink. Nexthink really is a different way of thinking about technology reality. It's about measuring what matters. With Billy Beane and the Oakland A's, and then right after that, the Red Sox adopted it and won their first World Series in like 90 years. Okay, they stopped measuring batting average and how many home runs and those kind of statistics, and they started measuring how often does this score a run and why. Because that's how you win games, and that was the metric that mattered. And that simple change changed everything. Okay. Changing to a DEX-centric way of managing and optimizing your IT environment is very much like Moneyball to me. It's measuring what matters, because here's the reality. If your SaaS provider's back end is crashing 50% of the time, but every one of your users using Salesforce or Oracle Financials or, Genesis, or pick your favorite SaaS app, if nobody's being impacted, do you care? You don't. On the other hand, if all their metrics are green and all their data centers are up, and you've got employees in an entire department or an entire region who can't work, that matters, right? So you've got to measure and manage to what matters. And to me, that's DEX, plain and simple. And the fact that we now have DEX with our new DEX score V3 and its moments of experience integrated into that. So we literally know every hour what Dave's experience, Tom's experience, Oriana's experience, Sean's experience is with every app you're using. That's huge. So again, DEX centricity.
Great answer, Dave. And I do want to circle back briefly to CrowdStrike, because I know you touched upon it. But I mean, in terms of learnings from CrowdStrike and implications for other applications and for application management in general, Is there anything to add to what you've already said? Is there anything to flesh out there?
Yeah, what I would say is just follow best practices when you're deploying and rolling out changes. Okay. If a SaaS vendor is going to roll out a change, make sure you roll it out in a, private, firewalled, dedicated testing environment. A. B, make sure you do that with any application, whether it's a binary or updates to web applications. Test them, pilot them, manage that ruthlessly. Don't just trust the vendor. So that would be one overarching thing. The other one would be sometimes these things are going to happen. There's a history of these kinds of disasters having. Have a fallback plan for when something like this happens. So for example, I read somewhere that a lot of times not every system that got affected by CrowdStrike went into that boot loop. Okay, there were differences between them. But for the ones who did, they needed to manually enter a BitLocker key. Well, maybe you should have a proactive process in place using something like Nexthink to make sure that every employee always has a current version of their BitLocker key and some written instructions so that they can do it themselves when IT can't remote in. And just little things like that would have significantly reduced the impact and the scope and reach of what happened with CrowdStrike. So it's funny. I have family members that work for some of the airlines that were and weren't affected. And it was really interesting to see the differences in the way they approached it from an IT perspective. So, and they align very much with some of the concepts that I've just talked about. I don't want to get into naming names, but if you follow best practices and you proactively enable recoveries, you can really mitigate the inevitable problems when they do occur. You can prevent most, not all. You can't prevent everything. You have to be a realist here, but you can certainly mitigate and you can certainly minimize what the impacts might be.
Yeah, glad I asked, Dave. Glad I followed it up. Dave, we have like a corny end question. It's kind of a tradition here on Reality Bites, where we haven't done it for a couple of weeks, a couple of episodes. What is your favorite thing about being a Nexthinker?
I'll give a funny answer. Then I'll give. It's literally like to hear somebody like you invite me as one of the most fascinating and interesting guys. I love that because here's what it says about our culture, right? We're all fascinating. We're all interesting. We all bring a wealth of passion and knowledge to this Moneyball for IT. And to me, it's that shared culture and passion that every Nexthinker I've run across has. So I've been doing IT a long time, and it's unique here. It really is. And so that's it.
Like it. I always appreciate a colleague I can get music tips off, Dave. And I have given Rush a couple of listens, following you're almost as passionate about Rush as you are application experience. And
La Via Strangiata.
I am making the occasional dip into the Rush discography, so thank you for that.
Okay, all right.
I do like it, but
anytime. Pink Floyd's pretty good too, but I'm
already a Floyd guy. Don't worry. Down with Floyd. But Dave, absolute pleasure to have you on, and you speak so eloquently and passionately about application experience. You're a wonderful evangelist for that product. And it was great to talk to you about it. Really appreciate it. It's good to see you, man.
Thanks for having me. Let's not be strangers.
To make sure that you never miss an episode, subscribe to the show in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast player. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, make sure to leave a rating of the show. Just tap the number of stars you think the podcast deserves. If you'd like to learn more about how Nexthink can help you improve your digital employee experience, head over to nexthink.com. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.